Recording now? Okay. There you go. All right. First of all, for the people who don't know me, I'm Larry Karp. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to present. Today, I'm going to talk about 1031 real estate exchange very briefly, because I'm sure most of you know what they are and have transacted in those, and what a DST is, Delaware Statutory Trusts, that are like 1031 like kind eligible. And what I do, I basically, in a nutshell, I represent sponsors of Delaware Statutory Trusts. Are you showing your screen, Alex?
1 second, Larry.
Yep. A little background on me, for those that don't know, I moved down here into Boca Raton from New York. There we go. I'm a native New Yorker. My whole life, and now made the transplant down to South Florida. I also come from the corporate world, selling big enterprise software, working at companies like Verizon, Sprint, Accenture in the past, but it's all sales and business development. Now, how that segues into this, when I moved down to Florida, decided to reinvent myself and focus 100% on DSTs and 1031s. And it's really piggybacking off my partner, Scott Offerman. You have it? Yeah. Scott Offerman, the founder of 1031 Financial. You could expand that and we'll get to it. Yeah, 1031 Financial is a company that's been around 12 years. We represent at any given time. Yes, yeah, just start there. At any given time, we represent about a dozen or so big institutional sponsors representing about 60 different types of DSTs, which I'll get into. That represents about an inventory of 5 billion in equity at any time. All right. So first, let's get into the mechanics first. So I'm sure most of you, especially the broker on the broker side, know what a 1031 exchange is. There you go. 1031 exchange is really it's a code within the IRS code section 1031 that essentially is a tax deferral strategy, and it's designed for investment property. Typically, it's on the commercial side, on the commercial brokerage side. However, it really is designed for accredited investors, right? So residential brokers still utilize this tool pretty aggressively because, for those vacation homes, waterfront homes of people that have investment property and they've had it a long time and they have a very low cost basis. They've owned it for several years and they're just at a point in their career or their lives where they just do not want to manage property anymore. And to give you an idea of what this tool offsets, coming from the New York area, all in with federal, state, ACA tax, depreciation recapture of an investment property, which is typically spread out over a 39-year period. On the residential side, it's less. It's about 27 and a half, I believe. Anyway, at the end of the day, in New York, that could be, depending if there's city tax involved or not, could be anywhere from 40 to 50% of total capital gains impact when you sell a property, an investment property. Down here in Florida, it's similar minus the state tax and typically minus city tax too. So the impact could be in the 25 to 35% range all in. So if you bought a property, I don't know, whatever it is, waterfront property years ago for say 100,000 and now it's worth 3 million, that 30%, round number, 30% of that capital gain is taxable. So that's why people use the 1031 exchange, where basically the IRS enables you to offset and fully defer, not avoid, but fully defer the taxes from a sale of an investment property. Okay. And there are some parameters around it, right? Working with, you see there, for people that aren't aware, a qualified intermediary. Think of them as the third party escrow fiduciary, right? They're not supposed to have any type of pre-existing relationship with a buyer or seller. They're basically the disinterested party that holds the proceeds and essentially orchestrates the 1031 process to meet IRS guidelines. So you see, there's a lot of process here around filing and wiring and all that stuff, but they're the third party that gets in the middle of between the buyer, the seller, and then the seller and then the buyer, to do a 1031 exchange, right? So, but you see the two numbers here that are quite important, to be honest, and why 1031 sometimes are tricky is because the IRS, from the day you sell the property and the proceeds sit with the qualified intermediary, the investor has 45 days to identify up to um, three properties to roll those funds into. So, for example, if you have $1 million property, you're selling $1 million worth. So $1 million of proceeds are sitting with a QI. Your cost basis was about 100. You now have 45 days to identify a million or above equivalent to defer the tax on that $900,000 delta, right? And again, round numbers, that could be a 30%, about 270K hit from a capital gain tax perspective, right? So within 45 days, you're working with your broker, the investor's working with a broker, typically, doesn't have to be, but typically, and they identify 1, 2, up to 3 properties. And they then work with the QI that will register, come up with an ID number to register those properties to fulfill the 45-day requirement. From then, right, and these are calendar days, so it could fall on Thanksgiving, it could fall on Christmas. The IRS does not care. It's from the day that the proceeds are placed with the QI that the clock starts ticking. Now, as the 45-day identification period is tricky because, as everyone knows here, the real estate market is very fluid and there are a lot of nuances and things change. And typically, these deals, the properties that you had lined up, they fall through for whatever reason. Another bidder came in and the seller decided to go in that direction, or the seller knows that you're in the midst of a 1031 exchange or on the clock, and that they have leverage over you. So and then you see at the bottom right, it says 180 days to close. So within that 45-day period, and also you can go to the next slide, Alex, the 180-day closing period, a lot of times we get brought in. Yeah. Okay. And I'm not going to drain these, we get brought in when typically we get brought in when there are problems, right? We say that what we do in terms of representing big DST, Delaware Statutory Trust sponsors, we like to call ourselves a tool. The one time I don't mind being called a tool, it's fine. Option one, what typically happens? Sell the property, pay the tax. God forbid, right? Option two, work with your fiduciaries, your trusted advisors, your CPA, your broker, what have you. Go through the 1031 process yourself, and hopefully it's a successful transaction. Option three, when things go sideways, when things, like I said, the identified properties fall through, or say at day 42, the QI or the investor will call us up and say, "Oh my God, my properties fell through. Can you help? Because otherwise I'm going to be paying full tax on it." So what we do, we have an inventory of institutional product represented. We represent companies, I'm not sure if you're aware, names like Inland Securities, Pasco, Cantor Fitzgerald's, Carter Exchange, people like that. They're all billion-dollar plus companies. And what they do is, you go to the next slide, Alex. What they do is they identify cash flowing big properties, or they syndicate multiple properties. Yep, you could, yeah, you made it a little, that's fine. This is just an example of the type of properties slash product that they are looking to which securitize and get ready for a 1031 like kind exchange eligible product. So to net it out, DSTs received a revenue ruling from the IRS saying that these private placement structures can now replace a real property in a 1031 exchange. So they're another option. It doesn't mean you have to do one or the other. Like if you're struggling to find $1 million of property, but you only found half a million, and the other half a million is open, you're exposed, you can put it into a DST or several DSTs. And to give you an example, what I put here is this is an example of where some of the products that we have in inventory that people can buy a slice of. So think of like the Amazon distribution center in the top, you see the picture in the top right, right? Net Lease Capital, a sponsor we work with, they've identified this property. I think they've syndicated more than one into this offering. It's like a $500 million offering, and it's designed first for, again, 1031 equivalent, fully tax deferred, and designed for credit investors that are struggling or looking for alternatives to just rolling their funds in a 1031 exchange into another property. Or maybe they just don't want to deal with managing property anymore, but they love passive income. So a triple net tenant, a top class A tenant like an Amazon, right? This is designed conservatively because the quality of the tenant, so it'll yield about 5%, 5.5%. But the thing that you're really getting is you're getting full tax deferral, you're getting capital appreciation. I'm never going to guarantee it, but the way they're designed is they have a term to them. They range from 5 to 7 years. They never go full term. So basically, the investor that puts his money in addition to the passive monthly income they're getting, they are also um, what'll happen is the sponsor will say, hey, we're selling the property, or we're selling the placement, so to speak. Your $1 million is now worth $1.2 million, right? Would you like us to divert the money into, put the money into the checking account where you've been receiving your passive income? Or would you like to continue to defer, into another DST? Now, the other beauty of this is, Alex, you mentioned earlier a deal or an opportunity that probate was involved, a probate attorney. This is a excellent tool for estate planning, probate, etc. Because when you put funds into a 1031 exchange process, whether it's putting it into real property or into a DST where you're getting a slice of this type of investment, you get a full step up in cost basis, right? So basically, as it's passed along, and when that investor decides to keep deferring, swap till you drop, his or her heir would receive or inherit the property at that $1.2 million cost basis. Okay. So versus that 100K cost basis that he or she originally had, because now the tax impact has been, all the gains are embedded into the product, the DST. So what I'm showing here on this slide are different examples of some of the product that we have and we represent. You see the top right, you see that's industrial, Amazon. You see this medical center facility in Utah. You see multifamily. You see a beautifully designed, cash flowing. And what's interesting, the one at the bottom left is there's a fund we work with, Inland Commercial, that has built a fund that yields an average about 9%, a little more aggressive. But what it does is it's investing in retail, gas station, and the land underneath, and they're starting from Texas and all the way up to the middle of the country. And all new product keeps coming on quickly. I mean, we had from one of the sponsors in Arizona. It was a big multifamily complex. I think it was like a $250 million offering. TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor, bought up the whole. It was built for them really, and it sold out like quick. So the message I'm trying to say here is these are designed for the property owner investor that is used to owning and managing and dealing with investment property, and he or she has owned it for years and years, sitting on big capital gains, but wants to sell. Just tired. The kids don't want to manage the you know the properties anymore. They don't want to get their hands dirty to deal with the tenants, toilets, or trash. They love the passive income, but they don't want to manage property anymore. So that's why DSTs are in such high demand, and they're so attractive, because you're essentially getting the same elements of owning property plus full tax deferral plus step up in cost basis and plus most likely capital appreciation, but you don't have to manage property anymore. So just the next slide, and then that's it. And I'll finish up. A lot of words here. I'm going to send out the deck, but this is really a cheat sheet as to why or when to bring me in, to bring myself, my partner, but really to bring me in, right? When we're a tool to really help you, the lender, the broker, essentially to add grease to get the gears moving, to get a deal moving, because what we're seeing is um, you know, like Alex said earlier, in all around the country, but especially in this market, huge capital gains, or rather, huge valuation increases, resulting in big sitting on big capital gains, which, if they sell, will have huge impact, right? So what we can do is show the client that, hey, you have a guaranteed insurance policy. You could sell the property and you can put it into all the proceeds into a DST, or you still want to own property, but you know, you still can't find the equivalent to offset and get full tax deferral. We can work with you to do a combination of both. But at the end of the day, you can work with us and you can identify properties that are eligible for full tax deferral with the IRS. And you see here, there's a whole laundry list of reasons why, what have you. You see at the bottom, the one that says refi opportunity. That is interesting without getting too deep in it. And it helps brokers because it's a specialty product that we have. Amazon's the tenant, where essentially the investor can put 14 can invest into, say, $1 million into the Amazon specialty product. We'll just call it that for now, specialty DST. After 30 days of a full, month distribution from the investment, can then refinance and take out 86% against that asset. So in other words, and you're still getting the full tax deferral. So in other words, you invest 14%, you get full tax deferral embedded, and then the investor has 860K to then go to the broker and say, all right, what are we buying? What are we doing? So in other words, the broker now makes money on the sale at the front end in an exchange, and now can also make another commission at the back end, finding new property for that investor to go into, and he or she is still invested in that initial DST, gets the full tax deferral, um, you know, and it's, without getting too much into the mechanics. I can get into the mechanics. Anyone's interested, we could talk offline, but it's a unique product. Not everyone has access to, but we do. Just last slide. It's really just about me, and Yeah, so my company, 1031 Financial, you're not going to see me listed there yet because we're putting together a whole, updating our marketing material and social media, etc. You'll see it in the new year. You'll see my partner there, Scott Offerman, and his wife, and some compliance people on there. But essentially, the company's been around 12 years. Um, this company, or Scott, this firm is the number one producer on the Northeast for some of the larger sponsors. They did 100 million in business last year, and the opportunity down here just in Florida is insane. And people are opening their eyes because a lot of them, again, are sitting on cap gains and they're worried about the tax impact, and they didn't realize this is an option for them. So basically, we're here to help you solve problems. We are complementary. We're not competing for clients. We're here to help you get deals moving, get the grease the skid, so to speak. So I gave you a lot. I will send out these slides unless Alex you already did. I don't know. And any questions, or we could talk offline. So
I have a question or a couple of
sure.
questions, if you don't mind.
Mhm.
On your first slide, it says that the capital gains are given to the intermediary. So it's just the capital gains. So if
The
I sell a
proceeds.
property,
No, I said the proceeds. The proceeds from
so if I
you.
sell a property for 1 million and the cost of the property was 100K, so there's 900K of capital gains. What do I
That
do?
you'll be that you're deferring. The full million sits with the QI.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
because on
but
the
what
first
you're
slide you
taxed
said the
on,
capital gains are
is
given.
the delta. Yeah.
Okay. Now,
That's called in one last thing. One thing I should have mentioned, what that is called in the industry, it's called boot, the boot, BOOT, right? That the delta that's not, that's basically the capital gains. It's called a boot. And if you don't shield it in a 1031, you're going to be, and you sell, you're going to get hit with, it could be up to 30% all in taxes.
yeah, the other question I have is who fits exactly the profile of somebody that wants to do this? Suppose I, as just a regular person, I am an investor and I have a house that I
Mhm.
sold. I have capital gains that I want to defer, but my target is to buy another house. Okay, but 180 days go by and I can't do it, so I go to a DST.
You
Now,
look,
once I am on the DST, how do I revert it back to go to the original target, which was the house that I wanted to buy? Can I do that?
well, you can, but understand what these DSTs are designed for. First, they're designed for tax deferral and safety. They're designed to mirror what a property owner has been getting from passive income and managing real estate, right? That's first and foremost. So in other words, if you're asking if you put into a DST, but then you want to take it out,
Yes.
right? To take it out, think about it, right? You're now within the 1031 process, your funds are now fully tax deferred. To pull it out, that's a taxable event. Now
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
could, I mean, but or if the amount's large enough and it makes sense, we have specialty products. So you do a refinance, like I mentioned. I mean, we could talk offline. A refinance that you then can take proceeds. You keep your initial. Say you invested $1 million, 140K would stay in the DST to get the full tax deferral. The funds that, or rather the passive income that you were getting is now deferred directly to the sponsor, but you now have 860K free and clear to do whatever you want with. You could buy a new property, you could have a big bar mitzvah, whatever you want to do, right? But you still have, because the deferral, essentially you're investing 14% and you can refinance 860K and you still get a tax deferral. So the tax impact alone is significant, or the tax impact mitigation alone is justified, right? So I don't want to get too deep in it, but I can get into mechanics offline if that's of interest.
So basically, my question is, this will not help me if I'm just a homeowner that want to go from my house to another house and I want to
This
defer the capital gains tax, right?
right. This is in the IRS. This is all, the IRS tax code says this is not designed for primary residence. And how's that clarified? In other words, if you live in the property, you're domiciled in there for at least 14 days of the year, that's your primary residence. That's how the IRS looks at
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I still
Right?
could do the 1031 if I find the next house within 180 days, right?
But you're doing it, but remember, you're not doing it just to do a 1031. You're doing it because you're worried about the taxable impact of
Right,
the sale,
right.
right? So that's what it's set up for. There are people that they love the DST structure. They love getting the return. They love that property management is now under
Yeah,
a big institution is dealing with it, and they don't have to deal with managing a building anymore,
yeah,
managing a
yeah.
property.
I
But
understand that part.
typically,
Yeah,
the way these things are designed and how they came to market was about 20 some odd years ago. There was a revenue ruling that said that DSTs are now 1031, IRS code 1031 like kind eligible, and they qualify as being fully a tax deferral vehicle. The other thing is, Erico, again, the step up in cost basis. That's a big deal because what happens a lot of times, especially with the larger amounts, people swap till you drop. They keep deferring, deferring, deferring. They don't want to pay tax. It's not tax avoidance, it's tax deferral. And each time you defer, cost basis goes up. First one you bought in at a million, it appreciates to a million two. Now you roll it into another, sorry, into another investment. Your cost base is now a million two. God, one day you pass away, you want to give it to your children. They receive it at a million two, right? So down the road, if they sell, say for a million five, they're getting their cap gains, unless they put into into a 1031 or a DST, is that 300K delta versus they're selling in a million five, but their cost base was 100. So that's why this is designed. It was designed not just for people avoid or to defer tax. It was designed for investment in new real property, new construction, keep the economy moving. That's what, DSTs, or rather 1031s have been around for over 100 years. Okay, there's always a lot of, political discussion what we do with them, but it, let's just say the lobby is very powerful, the real estate lobby, right? So, make
yeah.
sense?
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other
I have a
questions?
question. I have a
Of course.
question.
Yeah,
Can I speak? Thank you.
of course.
Thanks, Larry. This is not the first time I've heard you speak about this, of course, and it is very interesting. And so you did mention very briefly, but if you could just say in a general way how a DST can be inherited by heirs without, is it possible they could inherit it without the capital gain?
Uh, yeah, that's they receive with a new cost basis. Okay, so that, like I said, the the individual bought the property 30 years ago for 100K, whatever the property is. Okay, and it's now worth $1 million. And they're at an age they want to sell it. But they want to shield the tax. They want to defer the tax. So they going through the 1031 process with a qualified intermediary. They now they put the proceeds of $1 million. They buy $1 million worth of DST or multiple DSTs, whether it's a multifamily, it's a student housing, it's what have you. So now $1 million is embedded as new cost basis in that DST. Okay, or those DSTs, we'll say plural, right? So now they pass on it. Like I said, the heir will receive it at, either $1 million unless there's appreciation at say $1,000,001. That'll be the new cost basis. Whatever, whenever the DST is closed or deferred into something else, it'll be at that new cost base. So it's not the 100, from originally, right? Do you follow, Lynn, what I'm saying?
Kind of.
Okay.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
no, it's basically you now have $1 million cost basis,
Yeah.
and you're asking like the inheritance, right?
Yeah.
Is that what
Yeah.
you're asking?
Yeah. Yeah.
They receive it at that $1 million cost basis. That's how it's designed.
And if they choose to continue it in a DST, then they will not have to pay any
Correct.
inheritance tax or capital
Correct.
gain or whatever. If they
Correct.
choose not to, then they're going to have to pay the tax at that time.
If there's a delta above $1 million,
Yeah.
like in other words, if they they receive it, they sell it 1.2 million, they want to just free and clear, don't want to do a 1031, whatever the taxable impact is on that 200K delta, but it's still a lot better than the difference between 100 and 1.2 million.
Right. Right.
That's
And
how you want to think of it. Yeah.
okay, that's good. And so thinking about an inheritance, so
Mhm.
would somebody put it the put it in the name of a trust or put it in the name of an
Yes.
LLC or their own personal name? How would they do that?
Yeah, typically we see these all the time where, for example, their family members are in a tick, and I know it's unheard of, but they don't always get along. And say of 4 people, 3 of them want to do a DST, but one doesn't. So what happens is there's a way to basically put them into a trust that drops into a DST while still taking care of the person that doesn't want to be part of it. And they'll pay the tax. They want out, they'll pay the tax, but the
Good.
remaining parties are now put into a trust, but they're now inside a DST.
Great.
So
Okay.
again, and that where I recommend. Oh, the one thing I mentioned, I should have mentioned that my target, who I work with, are lenders, brokers that have their client as investment properties. They want to shield from defer on capital gains. But the sweet spot for me, CPAs, the qualified, the fiduciaries that really advise the clients on their taxable impact of whatever they're going to do. So real estate attorneys, probate, estate attorneys, and CPAs typically. Sometimes title, but those are the ones that understand the vehicle and how it really solves a problem. I mean, that's how we push this. We're not selling product. We have inventory of a lot of product, but we're solving problems. And what I find interesting, especially down here, it's amazing. Of 10 people in the real estate business, I would say on average, 3 really fully understand what a 1031 is. Obviously, less than that know what a DST is. So these options are kind of eye openers for people. So it's just, we're here to educate. And to be honest, bring me in any call, because at the end of the day, if all I'm doing is educating and they still don't do a deal with me, that's okay, because I'm helping you advise your client, helping you differentiate with your client, something unique and different, and like the light bulb will go off, and like, oh, I didn't realize I could do that, and they'll look at you differently as differentiated, that you're bringing real value to your client. But it's the best form of marketing and advertising for me, because I'm bringing a service to a client, and eventually it'll pay off. I mean, that's how this thing works. So
Great.
How do you
Great.
charge?
how do I charge? I don't. It's embedded in the
Okay.
DSTs. The fees are embedded in the DSTs. So there's no additional line item for the broker. There's no additional line item, rather, for the investor at closing. That's what I meant to say. So it's transparent to you and to the client. Does that help? Any other questions? David, you and I have been talking about this several times offline. Did I help a little?
Yeah, I think you nailed it.
The visuals, did the visuals help?
Yeah,
Okay, I'll send the deck, just a couple slides. So
yeah.
very good. Alex, does that meet your?
So Larry, thank you very much. This is a very innovative product, and as professionals, it behooves us to know what all of our options are. Again, the tax consequences when you sell property can be shockingly severe, and you have to plan for it in advance. So thank you very much, Larry. I'm now going to stop the recording.